The avoidant walked away from you with apparent ease. They ended the relationship without visible emotion. They discarded what you built together as if it meant nothing. They moved on quickly, or seemed to move on, giving every indication that losing you didn't affect them at all. You watched them discard you and you internalized their coldness as evidence you didn't matter, as confirmation that the relationship was never as meaningful to them as it was to you, as proof that they're fine while you're devastated. But this interpretation is completely wrong. The avoidant isn't fine. They're not unaffected. They're not cruising through life unburdened by the loss of you. They're paying a price for discarding you, and the price is heavier than you realize, heavier than they'll ever admit, heavier than even they fully understand in the moment of discarding. The payment comes due slowly, accumulating over months and years, compounding as they live with the consequences of choosing fear over connection, as they experience the cost of their patterns, as they realize too late what they threw away. The avoidant pays for discarding you with regret that never fully resolves, with loneliness they can't escape, with the haunting awareness that they destroyed something precious because they were too scared to keep it. The price the avoidant pays isn't immediate. That's part of what makes it so insidious. In the immediate aftermath of discarding you, the avoidant often feels relief. The pressure is gone. The fear is reduced. They've eliminated the threat by eliminating the intimacy. They feel lighter, freer, more themselves. This relief confirms their choice to discard was right. It validates their belief that relationships are too much work, too much pressure, too much sacrifice of autonomy. But relief is temporary. It's the feeling of removing a weight without recognizing the weight was keeping you grounded. Once relief fades, usually within weeks or months, the actual cost of discarding you begins to surface. And that cost doesn't decrease over time, it increases. Every month that passes, every year that accumulates, the avoidant understands more clearly what they lost and can never get back. The avoidant pays for discarding you even if they never admit it to anyone, even if they never reach out to express regret, even if they maintain the facade that they're fine with their choice. The payment happens internally, privately, in moments alone when their defenses are down and reality breaks through. The avoidant lies awake at 3 a.m. thinking about you. They see something that reminds them of you and feel a pang of loss. They compare everyone new to you and find everyone lacking. They recognize patterns repeating in their life and understand you were the exception they squandered. All of this happens silently, invisibly, in the interior of their experience where no one sees. The avoidance suffering from discarding you is real even when it's completely hidden. And hidden suffering is often worse than visible suffering because it's carried alone without support or witness or acknowledgement, the price of living with permanent regret. The first and heaviest price the avoidant pays for discarding you is permanent regret that they can never fully resolve. Regret about losing you settles into their psychology like sediment, a heavy layer they carry everywhere, a weight that affects everything even when they're not consciously thinking about it. The regret isn't just about losing you as a person. It's regret about who they were in the relationship, regret about how they treated you, regret about their inability to be brave enough to keep you, regret about all the moments they could have chosen differently and didn't. This comprehensive regret touches every aspect of their self-concept and their understanding of their life trajectory. The avoidant regrets specifically that they treated you poorly before discarding you. They remember being cold when you needed warmth. They remember withdrawing when you reached for connection. They remember making you feel small for having normal needs. They remember all the ways they hurt you while you were still trying, still patient, still hoping they'd change. This regret about their behavior is particularly heavy because it's regret combined with shame. They know they were the problem. They know you deserved better. They know their treatment of you revealed something ugly about themselves, something they can't unsee now that they are looking back with clarity the relationship's ending provides. The avoidant also regrets the timing of discarding you. They recognize they discarded you right when things were actually getting good, right when real intimacy was becoming possible, right when you'd been patient enough, long enough that genuine partnership could have formed. They threw away the relationship at the exact moment it was transforming into something real, and that timing makes the regret especially acute. They understand now that their fear peaked right when the opportunity for real connection was greatest, and their response to that peak fear was to run. They're living with regret that they chose fear over love at the critical moment when the choice determined everything. The regret is permanent because the avoidant can't undo what they did. They can't go back and be different. They can't have a do-over where they're brave enough to stay. They can't restore what they destroyed. Even if they reach out and you give them another chance, the original discarding is permanent history. The trust they broke can't be completely restored. The pain they caused can't be erased. The time lost can't be recovered. The avoidant lives with the knowledge that they made an irreversible choice, and that choice cost them something they valued, and no amount of wishing can change what happened. Permanent regret about irreversible choices is heavy burden that the avoidant carries for the rest of their life. The price of you becoming the one who got away. The avoidant pays for discarding you by transforming you into the one who got away, the idealized lost love, the person they compare everyone to and find everyone lacking. In your absence, stripped of the daily reality of relationship, you become perfect in the avoidant's memory. They forget the conflicts and incompatibilities they focused on to justify discarding you. They remember only your patience, your understanding, your willingness to work with their limitations. You become in retrospect everything they actually wanted, but were too afraid to keep. And carrying you as the idealized one who got away damages every future relationship attempt, because no one can compete with idealized memory. The avoidant compares every new person to you, and the comparison destroys potential connections before they can form. The new person isn't as patient as you were. They don't understand the avoidant as deeply. They don't create the same feeling of safety. They don't accept the avoidant's limitations as gracefully. Every comparison finds the new person wanting, and the wanting prevents the avoidant from being present with new people. They're perpetually disappointed that no one measures up to what they had with you, to what they threw away, to what they're now certain they'll never find again because what they had with you was rare and they destroyed it. You being the one who got away also means the avoidant experiences haunting. You appear in their thoughts constantly. You're the ghost in every new relationship, the standard everyone is measured against, the what if that undermines every present moment. The avoidant can't fully engage with new partners because they're comparing those partners to you. They can't fully invest in new relationships because part of them is still mourning losing you. They can't move forward because they're stuck in regret about the past. You haunt them not because you're trying to, but because they made you significant through losing you. And significance doesn't disappear just because the person is gone. The avoidant also pays the price of knowing they had their best chance and destroyed it. They recognize that what they had with you was potentially their one opportunity for real partnership. You were the person willing to be patient enough, understanding enough, accepting enough of their limitations to make relationship possible. But they squandered that opportunity. They took your patience for granted. They didn't appreciate your understanding until it was withdrawn. They didn't recognize the gift of your acceptance until they lost access to it. Now they're living with awareness that they had what they needed, and they were too scared or too defended or too broken to keep it. That awareness is punishment that never ends, the price of repeating patterns and destroying every relationship. The avoidant pays for discarding you by continuing their patterns with every new person, destroying relationship after relationship, accumulating a trail of failed connections that all fail for the same reason. Each new relationship starts with hope. The avoidant thinks maybe this time will be different. Maybe this person won't trigger their fear. Maybe they've learned enough from losing you that they can do better now. But the patterns are stronger than the hope. The avoidant finds themselves being cold again, withdrawing again, discarding again. And each repetition of the pattern compounds their shame and their hopelessness about ever being capable of sustained intimacy. Every new person the avoidant discards reminds them of discarding you. They recognize they're repeating the pattern. They see themselves push away someone who cares about them for the same fear-based reasons they pushed you away. They watch themselves choose protection over connection again and again. Each repetition is its own punishment because it confirms what the avoidant fears most about themselves, They're fundamentally incapable of love. They're too broken for relationship. They're going to be alone because they destroy everything good they encounter. The pattern repetition creates accumulating evidence that the avoidant is the problem, and that evidence builds into self-loathing that's devastating. The avoidant also pays the price of isolation that the pattern repetition creates. Each person they discard is a bridge burned. Each relationship they destroy is a connection lost. Over time, the accumulation of lost connections leaves the avoidant increasingly alone. They've burned through the patient partners who might have stuck with them. They've used up goodwill with people who cared. They're running out of people willing to tolerate their patterns. And the increasing isolation is both consequence of their patterns and reinforcement of their belief that they're meant to be alone, that relationship isn't possible for them, that they're too damaged for partnership. The pattern repetition also means the avoidant never gets to experience what you could have built together. They're stuck in the early stages of relationships, in the honeymoon period followed by withdrawal, never progressing to the depth and security that comes from long-term partnership. They discard you before experiencing what years together could have created. The deep knowing, the comfortable intimacy, the partnership that weathers life's challenges together. The avoidant is choosing momentary relief from fear over the long-term rewards of sustained connection, and they're paying the price of never experiencing those rewards, of never knowing what they're actually capable of if they could just tolerate the discomfort long enough to get to the other side, the price of loneliness they can't escape. The avoidant pays for discarding you with loneliness that's particularly painful because it's self-created and yet feels inescapable. The avoidant is lonely by choice. They chose to end the relationship. They chose to push you away. They chose protection over connection. But the choice doesn't make the loneliness less painful. If anything, it makes it worse because the avoidant knows they created their own suffering, knows they had the opportunity for connection and rejected it, knows the loneliness is preventable, and yet they keep choosing the behaviors that create it. Self-created suffering that feels compulsive is its own special hell. The loneliness the avoidant experiences after discarding you is different from regular aloneness. It's not peaceful solitude. It's not chosen independence. It's aching absence of the specific person who understood them, who saw beneath their defenses, who accepted them despite their limitations. The avoidant is lonely specifically for you. They miss your specific way of being with them. They miss how you made them feel. They miss the safety you created. They can be around other people and still be lonely because the other people aren't you, don't understand them like you did, don't create the connection they had with you. The loneliness is specific and therefore harder to address because filling it would require having you back, which they've made impossible through discarding you. The avoidant also experiences loneliness that they can't talk about because talking about it would require admitting they made a mistake, admitting they're not actually fine alone, admitting they need connection they've spent their life claiming not to need. So the loneliness stays private, unshared, unwitnessed. The avoidant suffers alone with their loneliness because admitting the loneliness would contradict their entire identity. They're supposed to be the independent one, the one who's fine alone, the one who doesn't need anyone. But they're not fine. They're lonely. And the loneliness combined with inability to acknowledge it creates suffering that's particularly isolating. The loneliness compounds over time as the avoidant realizes they're aging alone. Years pass after discarding you, and the avoidant looks around and sees friends building lives with partners, sees people creating families, sees others accumulating shared history and deep bonds. The avoidant has accumulated nothing but a series of failed relationships and increasing isolation. The loneliness isn't just about missing you. It's about missing the entire life they could have built if they were capable of sustaining connection. It's loneliness for a future that's becoming increasingly unlikely as time passes and patterns remain unchanged. The price of losing your specific irreplaceable qualities. The avoidant pays for discarding you by losing access to qualities that were unique to you, irreplaceable qualities they can't find in anyone else. Your specific brand of patience, your particular way of understanding them, your exact sense of humor that made them laugh, your unique ability to see through their defenses without making them feel exposed. All of these specific qualities that made you valuable to them are gone, and the avoidant discovers that people aren't interchangeable, that losing you means losing everything specific to you, that they can't just find someone else who brings what you brought. The avoidant misses the specific way you made them feel safe. Different people create safety differently, and your specific way of creating safety was perfect for their specific fears. You knew when to give space and when to stay close. You understood when they needed silence and when they needed conversation. You could read their moods and their needs in ways that made them feel understood without feeling scrutinized. Losing you means losing that specific attunement, and the avoidant discovers that safety like you provided is rare. Most people don't have your patience or your insight or your willingness to work with someone as defended as the avoidant. Most people give up much sooner than you did. The avoidant also loses your belief in them. You saw potential in them they couldn't see in themselves. You believed they were capable of growth, capable of love, capable of more than their limitations suggested. Your belief sustained them even when they were pushing you away. But now that belief is gone. You withdrew it when you finally accepted they weren't going to change. And losing your belief in them means losing a reflection of themselves that was better than what they see when they look in the mirror. The avoidant is left with only their own harsh self-assessment, no longer balanced by your more generous perception. The avoidant recognizes they lost someone who actually loved them despite their difficult patterns. You loved them when they were cold. You stayed when they withdrew. You tried when they weren't trying. That kind of love is rare, especially for someone with avoidant patterns that make them hard to love. The avoidant understands now that what you offered was exceptional, that most people wouldn't have been as patient, that they took for granted something precious that they're unlikely to find again. They're paying the price of losing someone who loved the difficult-to-love version of themselves, and that's a loss that can't be easily replaced because most people won't extend that level of grace. The price of watching you thrive without them. The avoidant pays for discarding you by having to witness or imagine you thriving in their absence. Every indication that you're doing well without them, that you've moved on, that you've built a life that doesn't include them or need them, is a fresh wound. Your thriving proves you didn't need them the way they assumed you did. It demonstrates they were replaceable. It shows the relationship with them wasn't essential to your happiness. All of these realizations are painful because they challenge the avoidant's sense of their own importance, and they prove that discarding you didn't damage you permanently the way some part of them hoped it would. Watching you thrive is painful for the avoidant because it creates comparison between your trajectories. You're moving forward, growing, clearly doing the work to heal and build a better life. They're stuck, repeating patterns, not growing in any meaningful way. The contrast highlights their stagnation. It makes visible that you're evolving while they're staying the same. It forces them to confront that you used the relationship and its ending as catalyst for growth, while they're using it as confirmation of beliefs that keep them defended and limited. Your thriving is mirror showing them what's possible if someone does their work, and that mirror reflection is condemning because it shows what they're not doing. The avoidant is especially pained by the possibility or reality of you finding someone else who can give you what they couldn't. Watching you build with someone else what you offered to build with them is excruciating. They see you happy with someone who can be emotionally available, who can commit, who can show up consistently. They witness you getting from someone else what they were too scared to give you. And every indication of your happiness with someone else is evidence of what the avoidant lost, what they were too afraid to be, what they could have had if they'd been braver. Your thriving with someone else is the clearest possible demonstration of the cost of their fear. The avoidant also pays the price of knowing they're the reason they're not part of your thriving. Your success, your happiness, your growth. The avoidant could have been part of all of it if they'd been capable of staying. You offered them partnership in building a life. They rejected that offer. Now you're building the life without them. And they're watching from the outside, knowing they chose to be outside, knowing they discarded the opportunity to be part of what you're creating. This self-created exclusion from something good is its own punishment. Watching through a window at a life they could have shared if they'd been different. The price of internal shame and self-loathing. The avoidant pays for discarding you with shame and self-loathing that accumulate as they gain perspective on their behavior. In the immediate aftermath of discarding you, the avoidant can maintain defensive narratives that protect their ego. But as time passes, as they gain distance, as they watch their patterns repeat, the defenses crumble. They see themselves clearly as the person who destroys good things. They recognize they're the problem in their relationships. They understand they hurt people who don't deserve to be hurt. This clarity creates shame so profound it becomes central to their self-concept. The shame is about recognizing they're exactly what they've always feared. Someone who can't love properly, someone who hurts people, someone who's too broken for relationship. The avoidant has usually carried core shame about their inability to connect, but they've managed that shame through denial and rationalization. Discarding you and living with the consequences makes the denial impossible. They can't pretend anymore that everyone else is too needy. They can't maintain that they're just valuing independence. They have to face that they're afraid, and their fear makes them cruel, and their cruelty destroys connections they actually want. The shame of seeing themselves accurately is devastating. The avoidant also experiences shame about being unable to change, even when they understand their patterns. They see clearly what they're doing wrong. They recognize how their fear drives their behavior. They understand they're repeating cycles that hurt themselves and others. But understanding doesn't create change. They keep doing the same things despite knowing better. This gap between understanding and action creates additional shame. They're ashamed not just of their patterns, but of their inability to change their patterns, even when they have full awareness of the damage those patterns cause. The self-loathing that develops is about the avoidant recognizing they're wasting their life. They're spending their years defending against the very things that make life meaningful. They're choosing fear over love, protection over connection, safety over joy. They're accumulating nothing but regrets and failed relationships, and increasing isolation. And they know it's their fault. They know they're creating their own suffering. They know they had opportunities like you, and they destroyed them. The self-loathing about wasting opportunities, about squandering potential, about choosing smaller life than they could have, is crushing weight they carry everywhere. The price that compounds over years and never fully resolves. The crucial thing to understand about the price the avoidant pays for discarding you is that it doesn't decrease over time. It increases. Years after discarding you, the avoidant understands more clearly what they lost. They've had more experiences that confirm your rarity. They've met more people who don't compare. They've repeated patterns enough times to know the pattern is the problem, not the particular person. They've accumulated more regret, more loneliness, more shame. The passage of time doesn't heal the cost of discarding you. It reveals the cost more fully, makes it more undeniable, embeds it more deeply into the avoidant's psychology. The avoidant might reach out years later, might express regret, might want to try again. These reach-outs are evidence of the price they're paying. They wouldn't be reaching out if they were fine, if they'd moved on, if discarding you was the right choice. The reach-out is admission that they've been suffering, that the price has been too high, that they want relief from the consequences they've been living with. But often the reach-out comes too late. You've moved on. You've built a life. You're no longer available. And the avoidant pays additional price of recognizing that the timing of their readiness and your availability don't align, that they missed their window, that some losses are permanent. The price the avoidant pays is also paid in moments of clarity they can't unsee. They're lying awake thinking about you, and suddenly they understand fully what they threw away, and why they threw it away, and how stupid their fear was, and how much they've cost themselves through their patterns. These moments of clarity are painful because they're moments of seeing themselves completely, seeing the truth of what they've done, and who they are, and what they're likely to continue doing. The clarity doesn't lead to change often enough, which means the avoidant has to live with seeing clearly what's wrong while feeling powerless to fix it. The avoidant pays for discarding you every time they wonder what their life could have been if they'd stayed. They construct alternative timelines in their head where they were brave enough to keep you, where they did the work to heal their patterns, where they built the life with you that was possible. These imagined alternative lives are torture because they highlight the gap between what was possible and what is actual. The avoidant is living the smaller life, the lonelier life, the life without you, and they're aware constantly that they chose this life through their fear. They're paying for their fear with the diminished reality they're experiencing, and that payment continues every single day for the rest of their life, unless they finally do the deep therapeutic work required to change their patterns. Most avoidants never do that work. They just pay and pay and pay, accumulating regret and shame and loneliness, knowing they created their own suffering and feeling unable to stop creating it, discarding person after person, while understanding each discard will cost them, but being too afraid to do anything different. The price is high, the payment is permanent, and the avoidant knows it even if they never admit it to anyone, including themselves.